my presentation to be about 25 minutes, maybe 30, and then we'll have time for Q&A, but I don't expect to take the full hour unless there's a lot of questions. So, um, again, we'll try to be respectful of everyone's time. Joe, do you want to just kind of talk over the rules of the structure of the webinar and how we're recording it?
Yeah. Real quick. Good evening, everybody. We are recording this, for both for playback and for those who need it in the future. Sean is doing these two events tonight and tomorrow, both for East Coast and West Coast. But we're also trying something new, and we are currently being live streamed on our YouTube channel. So everybody, please be on your best behavior. Trying something new in our world. So I think we have like 75 people or so registered to be here in the room with us. And we have some social media posts out there, so people might be tuning in through social media channels. So be on your best behavior. Sean will be doing some Q&A, so the chat will be open. I'll be popping in to kind of see what questions are out there, or Sean will give people time to kind of pop in on their cameras and ask questions live. So that said, Sean, it's all you.
Thank you, Joe. My name is Sean Jeansgale. Head of Government Affairs and Policy for the Rail Passengers Association. Kind of lead on the organizing for the advocacy piece of the Rail Nation DC this year. And I'm just going to walk us through kind of an outline of the structure, which is new this year. I'm going to talk about some of the policy agenda items that we are tracking in 2026 and some of the goals that we hope to accomplish. Then I'm going to lay out the structure of the next few weeks as we enter the home stretch for prepping for the big week, not only in DC, but around the country, because a lot of folks cannot travel to DC, but still want to be part of, the advocacy program. And so they're going to be meeting with their members of Congress, the congressional staffers in district. So I expect we'll have a good level of participation as always, and there's a lot to tackle this year. It's going to be I think pretty pivotal. So and there will be time for questions at the end, but Joe is also going to be kind of tracking the chat. So if at any point you want to raise your hand or drop a question in the chat, feel free. He'll try to flag it for me, and I'll try to keep an eye on the chat as well. So we are trying a new meeting format this year. It was developed at the request of our elected leadership, and it was really done to center the council business meeting portion of the event in the center of the week. Last year, what we did was we had 2 straight weeks of meetings, and the council meeting was kind of that interregnum between week 1 and week 2 over the weekend, and it placed a certain burden on the schedules of some of the meeting participants, where you would have had to be in DC for a full week, which is both financially burdensome, but also puts a strain on folks' wallets. And we're very aware that you all are volunteers. You're doing this, you're very generous with your time and your money, and we're trying to be respectful of that and structure the meeting in such a way that no one has to be in DC for longer than 3 days, while still getting the legislative briefing, the day on the Hill, and the council meeting where everyone can come together. It's kind of all hands. Everyone will be involved on Wednesday, middle of the week, and get together and kind of just tackle council business, talk about, where the organization is heading, where advocacy is heading nationally, and have those conversations. It also allows this regional focus does allow our association to utilize the office event space we have at our office, which lowers overhead costs. We're aware that we are not a trade association. You cannot bill this to your work. And so, as money floods into Washington over the last decade or so, it's we've been very conscious of the fact that rooms are getting more expensive, event spaces are getting more expensive. We're having to charge more um, to have hotel conference rooms, and we were having to move further away from downtown DC. And we're getting closer, probably to Richmond. Than DC at times, it felt like, which makes it hard to get speakers. So, we're going to we got this great office space right near Metro Center. It's close to the hill. It's very accessible, um, and very centrally located. And so we're hoping to keep costs under control, and we're going to pass that on to you. And also the regional aspect the germ of the idea was the recognition that we do support national programs. We support Amtrak as a national operator. We track what's happening at the Federal Railroad Administration, the USDOT, and Congress much more than we do state ledge activity. But when you think about the political conversation that drives the narratives for individual politicians, which is an important part of our what we're trying to do with advocacy, the regional corridor developments, individual trains that people are trying to pursue, to improve, to launch, are what drive the conversation. And so we're going to try to recognize that in the structure of the meetings. So what does that actually look like? Again, this was laid out by our elected leadership, this new format. They presented to staff. We liked it. I think it checks the boxes of what we're trying to accomplish while still giving people a chance in the middle of the week to all come together and have that national focal point. But it begins Monday, April 21st, with Northeast and Southern divisions who will come into the office. They'll get the legislative briefing. We'll have training workshops. We'll talk about how you actually discuss the policy issues that we are tracking in meetings with congressional staffers, with members of Congress, and what the follow-up should be. It's then we will rotate. The very next day, Northeast and Southern Division goes to Capitol Hill, where they will have the meetings that they have scheduled. They will have all the meeting materials that they will picked up on Monday, and everyone should feel ready and well prepared to tackle the day's meetings. And then the new group comes in Tuesday, April 22nd. The Mid-Atlantic and Midwest divisions, and they'll get the same briefing Northeast and Southern divisions got the day before. Slightly different agenda. Obviously, it'll be regionalized. We'll have a tweaked lineup of speakers, but the structure will be much the same. It'll just be slightly different agenda items, regionalized. And of course, it'll be a smaller group, which hopefully will allow for more one-on-one time, more time for Q&A, more time for staffers and our council members and attendees to have a conversation rather than just a passive agenda where you listen to us in a big room. Wednesday, April 23rd will be the council business meeting. That's all hands. Everyone who's attending in person will be at this event. We'll have more information about the structure of that day, the location, coming soon. But just block out that Wednesday. That's going to be the day everyone is in town. Thursday, April 24th, we will resume the regional kind of cycle where we'll have the Southwest, Northwest, Mountains, and Plains Division come in for their legislative briefing and training session. Meanwhile, the Mid-Atlantic and Midwest divisions have their day on Capitol Hill. And then finally on Friday, we'll have the Southwest, Northwest, Mountains, and Plains divisions legislative Capitol Hill Day, where they'll have their meetings with congressional staffers and members of Congress. So you can kind of see the way we like rotate people in constantly. Um, no one has to stay in DC for longer than 3 days. That should keep hotel costs down. That should keep just the burden on your calendars down, while still, getting some personalized attention with staff, with presenters, um, and again, still centering the council business meeting. Next slide. Here's another way I think to look at that, because we are again, I know it's a slightly complex structure, so we're just trying to visually present that. But you can see here the groupings. We try to load balance based on the fact that we have slightly more members in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, plus because it's DC, I think the barrier to entry. So we wanted to kind of balance the numbers within each group. But these are also, I think, they do make sense from a regional grouping perspective. So the outline, again, I think I've tried to give a clear idea, but doors open at 8:30 a.m. on day one. The first half of the day will focus on presentations and briefings. Second half of the day will focus on workshops and meeting training. Meeting wraps at 4 p.m. Day two, you head straight to Capitol Hill. You'll have all your meeting materials that we will have given to you on day one. Our staff will be at HQ responding to requests, to be able to respond to requests and questions. You know, we will be doing, the next day of briefing. So we will not be as involved in the meetings themselves, but we will also be able to have an informal reception in the evening where we do a debrief. I'll stop right there real quick. Don't know if there's any questions that have filtered in or if that makes sense. Next section is going to be kind of a 20,000-foot survey of the legislative agenda, facing for transportation facing Congress and the related federal agencies. But seeing no questions. And we can have something at the end as again, as just a general Q&A. We're gonna have a kind of a four-front. I don't know if battle is the right word, but battle might be the right word on transportation policies, and uh, legislative tracking agendas. The first one is the thing we have to tackle every year, which is the fiscal year 2027 appropriations process. President's budget is likely to be delayed until past April. We're still dealing with the Department of Homeland Security FY26 budget right now, which is causing all the chaos at airports with Transportation Security Administration, staffing. Lines at TSA are crazy. We are hoping, fingers crossed, that will be resolved at the time of our meeting. But since many of us are coming on Amtrak, that's not our problem. I think, we'll hopefully, the one thing we do know is that April 20th is what Senator Collins, who is the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, has targeted for the earmark deadline for our members. So we will be communicating to you all about how best to highlight projects ahead of that deadline. But it just means I think we're going to be in a fairly nice part of the discussion and debate over the shape of fiscal year 2027 funding for passenger rail, for Amtrak, and for discretionary rail grant programs. I think it's worth noting that this will be the first appropriations cycle without that kind of next round of advanced appropriations from the IIJA, which is the authorizing transportation authorizing legislation. It's given us a certain level of predictability in investment. So we will miss that. There's still going to be some outstanding discretionary grants, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So the money is not completely dried up, but it does, I think, kind of emphasize that the rail renaissance that has been sparked by the passage of the IIJA, we're nearing the end of the track that has been laid down, and we have to really make sure as we communicate with offices that they know we need to provide that next tranche of funding. Towards that end, we will be also be talking about reauthorization. We've been spotlighting this for a few years now, but this is where rubber meets the road, steel meets rail, whatever metaphor you want to use, because current law expires September 30th of this year. Chairman Graves has said his committee, Transportation Infrastructure Committee, may release its first draft some point in April. He has indicated that in prior months that stay tuned, things are coming shortly. So we may not have something in hand by the time we all gather in DC. But since September 30th is fast approaching, I would expect there to be the perfect can't be the enemy of the good here. Whether they are where they want to be precisely in having developed the language and having had the conversations with stakeholders, movement has to happen sooner than later because there is August recess. There are a number of midterm elections and primaries that members of Congress are going to be focused on. So it really does compress the calendar, and we are going to have not a lot of time to get a very complex bill passed the House and the Senate, because if that expires, you lose the ability to collect federal gas taxes, and that blows up the Surface Transportation Fund, which funds both highways and mass transit, very quickly. So there's going to be the past years have been about expanding the horizon of expanding the kind of Overton window of we're what policymakers should be pursuing in regards to the kind of ambitious programs that we would like to see. I think this year is going to be about slimming down our message, figuring out what has purchasing, what has gained traction rather, in our outreach with stakeholders and policymakers, seeing what can realistically get passed and get kind of taken up as part of a bill, and really starting to clarify our ask to 2 to 3 specific agenda items that we want to see included as part of the reauthorization. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail next week. There's also this is a bit of a curveball. We were not expecting to be talking about this in 2026, but we did receive, some advance notice that there is a conversation happening within the Trump administration, within the top levels of the USDOT, the Federal Railroad Administration, and potentially even at the Amtrak board level about whether now is the time to restructure Amtrak, to look at how you can how you can restructure Amtrak to put it in line with best practices internationally, and look at some other models of operators abroad to see, is there a way we can do things more efficiently, deliver projects more efficiently, and deliver service more efficiently. Board action would be required, and by that I mean the Amtrak Board of Directors. We don't know a timeline yet. I do know that there was supposed to be a rollout much earlier. The shutdown earlier this year kind of messed with the planned rollout. We don't know where it is. Obviously, once news kind of started to leak out and there was press reports on it, we felt that it would be in the service of our members and the service of passengers to tell people what we know. And so the details are still hazy on that. We will again talk to you in more detail about what that looks like next week. But it is, again, at this point, with details uh, still very hazy. It's tough to know what we are talking about. I do want to get you guys in a position where you feel comfortable with the outline of the proposal before you have your meetings on Capitol Hill, so that you feel well versed and you at least know enough to kind of redirect any questions that make you uncomfortable to staff. Um, I also think, top level, we all have a general sense that, Amtrak could do things better. The US, frankly, could do things better with passenger rail and passenger rail project delivery. It just takes too long to get services up and running. So we are open to this conversation. But again, I think one of the big impediments and one of the big obstacles is predictable dedicated funding, and if a restructuring doesn't really deal with that, you're just rearranging deck chairs. Um, last little piece, last big piece rather of the kind of the four-track approach to rail policy in 2026 is the STB's consideration of a potential merger between Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern. It should be the largest railroad merger in U.S. history. There's a lot of hurdles to overclear. We are part of a stakeholder group that is looking at the filing that Union Pacific issued to weigh the claims and see how this would impact Amtrak. This potential merger could impact existing Amtrak service, future passenger rail service, and try to transmit that analysis to the Surface Transportation Board to help them, help them in their deliberations. The latest update on that is the STB said, your filing is incomplete. We need more information. So we're sending it back to you, and we expect something more detailed to be resubmitted to us if you are actually interested in pursuing this merger. So we're kind of in a holding pattern, but we are using that time to do an analysis of the initial filing, look at the routes that would be affected by a merger, and kind of at least ask the right questions. I'm not sure we have the capacity to really do the modeling necessary to come up with answers given the level of detail that has been provided. But again, we want to really help policymakers both at the STB and at the congressional level kind of understand the stakes of what's being discussed. There's also, I said the advanced appropriations are winding down, but because of the lag in the way discretionary grants are run, there are still a number of notice of funding opportunities that will be opening or are currently open. And so we would expect there to be opportunities for, some sizable passenger rail grants, so like federal state partnership national, federal state partnership Northeast Corridor, CRISI, and railway crossing elimination programs to still be in development. And we're hoping to have some more news to share with you all in April. But regardless, I think it's still worth highlighting to policymakers, but also, taking that information back to local decision makers at the city and state level, and talking about the fact that the window is still open for some of these programs. I'm hoping to get some feedback from you all today and tomorrow when we do the West Coast version of this kickoff webinar about what you would like to hear about. If there's any, open questions you have as you think about, your 2026 advocacy goals. One example I think that's going to be on top of everyone's mind is, okay, what this new strategy for the Amtrak long distance fleet procurement, what does that mean for delivery timelines? What does it mean for capacity? We're going to have someone from Amtrak to present at all the meetings on that and on what it means for the start of revenue service for the fleet. There's also another example I was thinking of in my own line of work is, what is the new division of funding between the Northeast Corridor and the national network mean for passengers? The president in his budget request and Congress in their annual appropriations shifted about $400 to $500 million from the Northeast Corridor to the national network as part of the annual appropriations process. And I'm trying to understand, where's that money going? What is the practical effect of Congress deciding to shift those funds between the two accounts? I'm sorry for the typo on this last one, but one of the things we're going to talk about to help you in your meetings is what happens to passenger rail, what happens to Amtrak if Congress fails to meet the deadline for reauthorization, which has happened before. And so I think it's gonna be good for folks to be briefed up on that. I'm seeing a couple items in the chat. Mhm. All right, I'm just gonna read these out. Steve Strauss said, not sure we would want to see a Republican pass reauthorization bill when the likelihood of control of the House may change in January 2027. It's a fair point. Even like I said, it has been known to happen for Congress to miss the deadline. I don't believe in my decade plus of experience in working on reauthorization bills that Congress has ever landed the plane on the first go round. So we might have a couple opportunities to we might have to have a couple failed attempts before we can get the boulder up the hill. The risk of mixing metaphors. So the thing I will say in response to that is we do have to be at the table this year, and I really would advise us against complacency as this conversation happens, because things move quick, and sometimes the stars align in funny ways. And if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So Danny said, can we +1 all three of those example questions? Consider it +1. Kim says, on restructuring, what does that actually mean for long distance service? Are we talking about expansion, contraction, or something else entirely? Can you also speak to corridor ID for long distance corridors? There's a real question about whether it is functioning as a pathway to implementation or becoming a holding pattern. These are great questions. I'm going to copy that down to make sure I cover that in next week's webinar when we will have, or sorry, I think it's actually the week after next week's when we really do a policy deep dive. Will we have Amtrak employee union participation? I hope so. We've been in conversations with a few of the unions about some other things, and that's a great point. I'm hoping we can get them to come in and identify a couple policy objectives that they are pursuing. We have been, working on a number of legislative um, proposals with them in the background. So I definitely think we can give some updates. Uh, Howard Marks, will we discuss Amtrak's takeover Washington's Union Station? What are its plans? I will add that to the list of things I would like to see Amtrak cover. Mark Palm said, "Hi everyone. Please note that one of the earlier slides shown in the briefing here for structuring around regions has the wrong April dates. The dates are listed from calendar year 2025. I apologize about that. I will go back and send a updated list to all the participants, an updated calendar reflecting the correct dates. All right. Should support la la la. Sorry, I'm trying to read the chat as it keeps developing. Kim said, if you're fortunate enough to be in the Ohio and attend the AAO Summit, Joel Zabot will be speaking, member of Amtrak board. I also will be there, so put a plug in for myself. I will take down the rest of these questions and make sure we either cover them in a future webinar, and we will have one every week between now and the day on the Hill, sorry, the Rail Nation DC, the full week of advocacy, or that they are covered by either Amtrak or another stakeholder during the meeting itself. So let's get to the next steps, just outlining again what the next couple weeks will look like. And then I will go exit out of this presentation and see if we can't cover a few more Q&A items. So the next webinar is going to be next Monday. We will be having it at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Apologies to anyone on the West Coast who can't get out of work at that time, but it will be recorded in addition to being live streamed. We're going to cover the logistics of getting meetings scheduled, both for people who are traveling to DC and going to the Day on the Hill, and for folks who are staying at home in district and scheduling meetings either via Zoom or with the in-district office. And we'll also go over the 2026 legislative materials. Those materials are going to focus two main pots, which is the deliverables, which are the things we would like you to kind of deliver, either by hand or through a follow-up email to congressional staffers and to members of Congress. It's going to be the fiscal year, and I'm sorry for the typo, but it'll be fiscal year 2027, not 2026, legislative grants, and our reauthorization shortlist. We will also have a few educational one-pagers. This will develop as we go along. I think I could see us doing a one-pager on the UPNS merger. I could see us doing a one-pager on restructuring. But right now, I'm looking at coming up with a frequently asked an FAQ around privatization and profitability in passenger rail. We have heard from our attendees in the past that this is one of the things that they hear most often from skeptical offices, skeptical congressional staffers is, I like trains, but if they can't make a profit, like why is it our job to subsidize them? There's plenty of conversations, plenty of reasons. If you look at the entire transportation network, that argument breaks down. Top one being, of course, the massive subsidies that we funnel into highways through the Highway Trust Fund. And I can tell you right now, Chairman Graves and Senator Cruz have both nixed the idea of raising the gas tax. That was before even the current war with Iran raised diesel prices above $5 a gallon. So it's definitely DOA right now. So that subsidy for highways is only getting higher. Um, so we'll have a one pager that kind of deconstructs a lot of those myths around subsidies and funding and who benefits from investment in transportation. We'll talk about the economic benefits, looking at some of the work we've done with our in-plan model. We'll have a one page around national network and rural mobility, looking specifically at long distance corridors. And we will talk about the environmental benefits of rail and transit. Um, Again, that kind of educational, that deliverables, we're going to try to keep it pretty tight, pretty slimmed down to just a few key asks. Educational, I expect that list to grow, and we are open to hearing from you all about um, what you would like, what you feel would be useful in kind of developing your arguments with congressional offices, with local and city and state politicians as you work for more and better passenger rail service. The full calendar will be so we'll have the Day on the Hill logistics next Monday. We'll have a full legislative briefing on rail and transit policy items Tuesday, April 7th. That's when we'll kind of do a deep dive on some of the items that you all flagged during the Q&A today. And we'll give some space for people to ask questions about some of the handouts that we've given them, so we can make sure that we're all on the same page. We don't want to step too much on the actual briefing we will be doing in person, but again, it's a lot to it's like drinking from a fire hose. I don't want to overload folks, and so I think establishing a good foundation through a number of advanced briefings is an optimal way to do it, and preferable to just trying to consume it all at once. We will finally have one last briefing and question and answer session Monday, April 13th and Tuesday, April 14th. It'll be a final update on the agenda, and it'll also just be, I think, office hours. So hopefully maybe I can recruit Joe and my boss, Jim Matthews, to kind of join in, and we can have some sidebars if necessary. But we want to make sure we kind of field any last minute questions or logistical snags and help you set up for a great Rail Nation, for a great week in DC. Stop there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Ideally, hopefully, there we go. I think Jim Webster had his hand raised for a while. Now that I'm not sure if you want to pose that question to the group.
Yeah, thank you. At this point, have we seen anything that's come out of Project 2025 that's related to passenger rail? I haven't heard of anything. Have you?
Well, Yeah, I think a number of the layoffs at the FRA, right when President Trump was sworn into office and kind of launched the Doge effort, could be laid at the feet of Project 2025. Arguably, some of the freezing of the discretionary grants. And notably, I'm thinking here of there was a an effort to freeze funding to the Hudson River Tunnels project. That was part of Gateway connecting New York City and New Jersey. Um, it was ostensibly about, diversion, equity, and inclusion um, policies, but in reality, the program they were referencing dated back to the Nixon administration. So, again, I think if you wanted to really kind of trace the origin of that particular um, effort to slow down some of the government spending and uh, the administrative tools that were being used, that would be laid at the feet of Project 2025. I don't we've luckily been, I mean, outside of the staffing levels, there haven't been, knock on wood, a lot of rescissions for many of our programs that we track. And even when you have, for instance, the California High-Speed Rail project getting $4 billion clawed back by the Trump administration, that money is set to be reprogrammed and redistributed to other passenger rail projects. So through the FSP National Network Program. So I mean, it definitely is when you look at corridor identification program, a lot of it I think is an overly Byzantine structure. Some of it is lack of staffing. I think that's, when people talk about it becoming a morass, people talk about it becoming a black box. Some of it has to do with staffing levels. Not all of it, but I think that's the limit of that's what I'm aware of.
Thanks.
Ba, 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 ba. Can we get info on what this is from Lance Hodges? Can we get info on what Amtrak management's incentive targets are? Um, I will flag that issue with them, and we can try to make sure that they cover it. Howard Marks says there have been a lot of criticisms of the new Estella train sets, particularly the perceived discomforts of the new seats, apparently modeled after European commuter trains. We can talk about that. I know that seat comfort was one of the things that was flagged in the long distance refleeting process with us kind of making the case that these are not, if you're going to be on a multi-day train ride, the requirements for seat cushioning are different than something if you're going to be on a train for 3 hours. So I'm sure we can get an update from them directly. Uh, Eva, I think. I'm new to this and learning. Grew up in the Northeast corridor and now live in Florida. The Northeast is finer than fun for passenger rail compared to the deserts we have in the South, especially heading west. And then there are some large gaps in service throughout the Midwest, Dallas, and Chicago. We have a huge interest in rail travel in the South, and we are overcrowded and the roads cannot keep up. That's a great point. And I'm hoping we will be able to hear about some expansion efforts in the South and Southeast, both from Amtrak and from regional partners. Stephen Wilder said, with gas prices soaring, Amtrak should be thinking about short-term equipment authorizations, such as canceling sale of Amfleet One cars and leasing any available equipment. including commuter cars for very short hauls. Also, we need to discuss Amtrak's negotiations to sell the 14th Street yard in Chicago. Gas prices are definitely be part of, I think, our conversation as we think about how we can use rail, both intercity and transit, to provide an alternative that is cost effective, ideally, to highway travel and air travel, which the prices are getting eye-watering. We will also flag that Chicago Union Station negotiated sale as an agenda item. I know that we've heard from some of our individual members, but also partner organizations, that they are concerned about making sure that capacity is protected in any sale that happens. Tasso said, will we get copies of the deliverables to read beforehand? Yes, and I'm hoping to have that on a page live by next Monday. So some of that has to be cleared with, our leadership, and we also like to run it by a few other offices. So what you might have your hands on might be a draft. But you will definitely have something that is similar to what we will be delivering on the third week of April, by early next week. All right. Is there an ideal time beforehand to be requesting meetings? Yeah, once we have that conversation Monday, I think that that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that 4-day stretch is going to be a really good time to start submitting meeting requests. It's not too far out. That people, sometimes if you're just 6 weeks, folks will be like, I don't know what my calendar is looking like. So if you could contact me closer, then that will be better for me. Now, obviously, the closer you get to the day itself, the more their calendar fills up and the less flexible they will be in accommodating your request. John McNeil asks, sorry if I missed it, who will be meeting with on Capitol Hill, or how does that scheduling with different reps work? Looks like that conversation has already developed. But yes, come for the briefing next week, and we'll get more into it. And of course, you also have my email address if you want to talk later this week. Ba, 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 ba. Lance Hodges, do you have resources that we can use to get educated on how the funding process works for those of us who are new to the legislative angle of the advocacy? Yeah. I think we can put together Funding 101. We have a kind of pre-auth 101, which does talk about that angle, but I think with a little bit of tweaking, we can have that be a little bit more holistic and cover the annual appropriation process in addition to reauthorization. Right. I think that has brought me up current with all the questions. So again, everyone, I had my email address up. I'm gonna put it up again. Right here. sjeansgale@narparel.org. You also should have Joe Aiello's email address, jilo@narprel.org. We are here to answer questions, and I'll drop it in the chat actually, just so people can copy. Hello? Okay, someone coughed. We can, so yeah, feel free to reach out to us at any point over the next few days, next few weeks, with questions as we kind of push, make the final push to try to get all our meetings set up. You know, it's gonna be a busy couple of weeks. A lot of materials to develop, and we are a small staff, as Joe mentioned, but we will try to be responsive, and we will try to use these webinars as a platform to get people the answers they need and to structure the conversation so that people can, again, share assets, share insights. We all, again, now that we have a good sense of the registrant list for each of the meetings, we will be also kind of sharing contact, having specific meeting, meeting specific communiques that will allow people to kind of see who else is coming, reply all, and coordinate a lot of those meeting scheduling items. We also have a intern, Leonardo, who's not able to join today. He is currently staffing on Capitol Hill, that I'm hoping will be able to really be a good asset in helping people work the meeting request angles. So with that, it's 7:52. I will close out the webinar. And again, we're here to help. Thank you for your time tonight. Thanks to Joe for manning the ones and the twos. And we look forward to working with you all over the next month to have a successful passenger rail day on the Hill. All right. Cheers, everyone.
Everybody have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you.